hell's favorite doctrine, once saved, always saved. I believe most people who believe this doctrine to be true don't understand the undercurrent of demonic forces that want everyone to embrace this idea, because it literally tries to unname the name of Jesus. It tries to unname who he is and in his very essence of Yeshua. And if we look at Isaiah chapter 9, we look at his name. For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given. And then we look at his names. The name of a person reveals the essence and the character of a person, and it reveals the purpose and the very core of who he is. So one of his first names is Wonderful. So wonderful, how could that be synonymous with sin, with sin, a continual, deliberate, premeditated lifestyle of sin? How can anything wonderful be about sin? For this purpose was the Son of God manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. He became a sin sacrifice for us. He took sin upon himself. So could sin consume wonderful, or would wonderful consume sin? The next thing, his name is Counselor. How can he counsel anyone if he cannot do away with sin? How can his counsel triumph the counsel of sin? Because sin is a carrying out of rebellion against God. It is contrary to the nature of God. God will not tolerate sin. This is why he gave his son to die, because that's the penalty of sin. The penalty of sin is death. So he took sin upon him and died so we wouldn't have to. So how could a counselor be a counselor if his counsel cannot triumph over sin? So that it's contrary to what his name means in every sense of the word. The other name is Mighty God. How can he be mighty if he cannot conquer sin? How can he be mighty? So we have this idea that we are once saved, always saved, or eternal security, while living with sin. Somehow this idea suggests that we can cohabitate with sin. So how can he be a mighty God if his might cannot free us from sin? How can they coexist? He can't be mighty. He's not a mighty God if he cannot and did not completely obliviate sin. How can these ideas coexist within a mighty God? He's a mighty God, but he's so mighty that he died for us to continually live in sin. Therefore, Christ is the minister of sin, which Paul says in Galatians he's not. In fact, Paul says, I'm so moved that you have believed another gospel, which is not another gospel at all. So I want to stay on point. Everlasting Father. How can Christ be associated with an everlasting Father if his everlasting can be interrupted by us living continually in sin or being brought under the power of sin? Okay, so Christ died only for us to live under the power or the persuasion or the influence of sin and have no freedom. So whom the Son sets free is not free, because he's not mighty enough to deliver us once from sin. So he in essence lied to those he healed when he said, go and sin no more. So he couldn't be mighty if his commandments could not be kept by his power. And then we come to the everlasting Father. The everlasting Father, everlasting, which means he cannot be interrupted with. He's always there. He is everlasting. So does sin outlast him? Now it's the idea that somehow he loves us so much that he died for us he died for our sin, and now we can continue to live in it. So his death is sufficient for us to continue to live in sin and still behold him, because nothing can take us out of his hand. Even though the psalmist clearly says that even though my soul is always in my hand, yet I do not forget thy law. Okay, even though the psalmist says, I greatly fear thee. Okay, so there's no need to fear him because his judgments are not just. His judgments will somehow fall short of judging. Okay, so these are the names that represent who he is. These names represent who he is. And these names reflect his authority and his everlasting power and his character over sin, in that he would not leave us in sin. He delivered us from sin. And then finally, when you look at the government shall be up on his shoulder, and these two words really stand out to me, and to establish it with judgment and with justice. How can he judge if sin has the final say? How can he judge? How can he even judge the world? Romans clearly says that if my sin abounds, why would I be judged as a sinner? Or rather, how will God judge the world? If the righteousness of God was commended by my sin. If I continue in sin, shall I continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. God forbid. So I just wanted to reflect on why hell's greatest favorite doctrine is so paramount, more so to the devil than it does to the human race, because Satan hates who Christ is. So his objective is to undo or strive to undo through human beings what Christ has done. And that is to question the character of Jesus, of Yeshua. It is to use the same argument he used with Eve. Did God say you would surely die? Okay. Did Jesus say you're truly delivered from your sin? Did he really mean that? No, let me tell you what he meant. He meant that you can keep sinning and you will still see him. There's nothing new about how Satan operates. So this is just a reflection of why hell's favorite doctrine is so paramount and so popular, because it shares an idea that is in direct conflict with the character of Jesus, the names of who he is, the character of who he is, and his dominion over sin. Selah, hell's greatest doctrine. Blessings to you. I hope that you would partake in the course I'm teaching to understand why this is hell's greatest doctrine. And I pray that some be delivered from embracing this lie and know that he has set you free from your sin, and you no longer need to sin because his seed is in you. And he that sin has not known God, neither seen God. And know that God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. Blessings to you. Messaging rates might apply. Text stop to opt out.